Work. I don't think I'm good enough to have my own show. I don't have enough experience to do this, make it successful. Ugh, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to work. Now, let me ask you a question. How would you react if somebody was standing in front of you saying those things to you? What would you do? What would you say? And yet many of us say the same, if not worse, things to ourselves every single day. These are limiting beliefs. These are bad words. And they're the topic of today's show. Hi, my name is Gretchen, and I am your Plight Attendant this and every Tuesday on the Plight Attendant Show, a weekly series created to be a safe space to talk about all of the things that we need a little extra support to get through, work through, and hopefully break through together. Today's topic is limiting beliefs. Joining me in the studio is life and purpose coach Peter Schlatt, who I'm going to let introduce himself in just a second. But first, a couple of housekeeping notes, as we always do. One, please introduce yourself when you come into the studio. Oh my gosh, Melissa Houston, you are awake. I am so happy to see you here. And hi, Carrie. Please, again, introduce yourself. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. That would be amazing. If you are on LinkedIn, you should be seeing closed captioning. If you are joining us from Facebook or YouTube, you can toggle the closed captioning on and off in the bottom of your player. And as always, before we get started, a word of gratitude. Thank you. Seriously. There are a million things competing for all of our time every day. And the fact that you chose to spend just a little piece of your path with me here today means everything. I'm so grateful to you. So thank you. Without further ado, let's get into this. I am going to introduce Peter. Peter is, again, a life and purpose coach. He is based out of Denmark. He is globally serving clients, however, and he has a lot going on. So I'm just going to turn the mic over to him and let Peter introduce himself to everybody who has graciously joined us here this morning. Hi, Peter.
Thanks, Gretchen. Amazing start. I'm thrilled to be here and on your show. It's a really nice format, and I guess it's going to be exciting to share our beliefs that we still have as a coach or that we had. And a few words about myself. I'm German, but I choose to live in Denmark, and I was in the corporate world for about 20 years and decided that in the end, this business-centric environment is nothing for me and my personality, which was step number one, understanding my person and personality and how I wanted to express it to the world out there. So yeah, that made me realize that basically change is inevitable in life, but growth is optional. So then I choose that I want to grow, and I left that corporate world behind. And since then, I'm coaching. And I found out particularly that topic of purpose because that was a game changer for me. When I understood how important our why is in so many facets of our lives, then I really understood that also many of my clients, they basically, the problem behind the problem is the why. And so that's what I do. And again, super happy to be here and have nice conversations.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you're here. And, Melissa in the audience, she actually is also a coach, and she's going to join me on a broadcast very soon. And so I'm excited to have, everybody here talking and everybody joining, because limiting beliefs are something that I think that everybody can relate to. We all go through it. What I started the broadcast saying, those are actually, hi, Gabe. Gabe is a regular. Gabe is a regular on Melissa's Saturday Coffee Chat. So I'm really excited to see everybody here. But the limiting beliefs that I started, that I opened this broadcast with, are actually ones that I have. They're not made up. I have those beliefs. So if you weren't here when I mentioned those, things that I said to myself that I need to work through and that I am working through are things like, I'm never going to make this work. I'm not good enough to have a show. Who am I, right? I don't have enough experience doing this to be successful. Well, that's one of the ways that you can work through a limiting belief, is to understand, one, it's not true. They're bad words, yes, but they're not true. Nobody has enough experience until they get experience. So when you can begin to deconstruct those thoughts, you can actually begin to take the power back from them. But, let's take that back a little bit. Limiting beliefs, what are they? And if you're in the audience, let us know too if you have any of these, like what are your, I call them mental monsters, but what are the ones that kind of, creep up and jump out at you and prevent you from doing things? Because that's what a limiting belief is. It's basically a thought, or it's a state of mind that you have, but it's basically how you think about something. It doesn't have to just be you. It could be an event or something else. But the key is it stops you from taking action. It is a persistent belief. It's a thought. Any thought that is persistent, that's habituated, becomes a belief. Limiting beliefs prevent you from doing the thing, whatever the thing is. So, if you have that and that's something that you struggle with, let us know about that. I think that, now we're saying good morning, and I love that. So, so Peter, with your clients, as a life and purpose coach, is this something that shows up in your practice with your clients?
It always shows up. And the best example is the two of us sharing this. So you could say, you are coaches, you're not supposed to have limiting beliefs. Oh, yes, people, we do have. And especially, if we are in the midst of trying new media and we need to be out there and, show that we are available and stuff like that, there are just tons of limiting beliefs that are going our way. So, yeah, so I have them as well. And let's talk about my clients. Usually, let's make an example. There is a job satisfaction issue. I'm not happy with my job.
Mm-hmm.
I just changed the job half a year ago, and still I'm feeling miserable. This somehow is not motivating me, but I don't know what to do. Now I had 5 jobs in the last 12 years, and where am I going with this? So then again, it's what is the problem behind the problem? Well, do you really know yourself? Do you know what you want to express when you are at work or in general in your life? Let's bring it, let's just make the scope open. And usually then the answers are like, I'm not really sure, or at least they might have an idea, but they cannot verbalize it. So if one of the most important parts of your life is something that you cannot really verbalize, then it will not drive you in a positive way because you don't have it crystal clear in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So then working with them on their purpose usually is a big awakening, and it connects them to why they're here, like their life was a training camp for them, and this is why I do this and that. And then they have a better understanding of how they can, connect to whatever their job environment might offer them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually a very fruitful ground for changes, be it in the existing job or be it on the search for next one, but one that definitely, clicks all the buttons.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, especially for, when we're talking professionally, there's so much that happens in the realm of limiting beliefs that keeps people in a spot that they don't want to be in, and breaking out of that can be really scary. And I think that goes to what Melissa just said, and I've got it on the screen, which is that fear and excitement come from the same part of the brain. Determine how you'll use that motivation to move on, which is really interesting because when you consider the fact that limiting beliefs all come from basically the same part of the brain that is trying to protect you from pain, from future pain, assumptive pain that may never even probably won't ever even happen, but it's a protective mechanism. And so how do we, get through that? I think that for you and your clients and for everybody else out there, it's really a matter of understanding what triggers these things. Where do they come from? They come from things like obviously fear. Imposter syndrome is a huge breeding ground of limiting beliefs, former experiences, and then external influences. We can have things that are said to us that reinforce a little grain of a belief that blow it into this huge limiter that we then have to deal with. And so how do we do that? That's a really, important thing to talk about.
Yeah.
But I think also, in terms of where we go with those. So, is there like one, like with your clients, like, especially when it comes to workplace, I know I have some with mine, but one like prevalent belief that keeps coming up with your clients?
I think let me approach this in this way. I think there are 2 parts where I see limiting beliefs acting a lot. So one is what you described, you are at work, maybe in a coaching or whatsoever, you are digging out some limiting beliefs. So the part of those limiting beliefs is they show up, they are hiding in very different kinds of emotions or patterns. So you might have a classical aggressive limiting belief saying you're not good enough,
Right.
you don't deserve a better job, I'm okay with this, which is something that I hear very often.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the other end, when we created an awareness, then it's about creating change and taking actions. And here comes a completely different set of limiting beliefs when we're supposed to take actions. And then suddenly that might be the easier one to see, like, oh wow, yeah, I have fear. Yeah, okay, I recognize fear. That's kind of an easy thing. But the ones that show up and hide as, I'm good for you, I'm protecting you, so we need to ask, what is the positive aspect of your limiting belief? Because that is usually the thought that you see. You will not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have an aggressive thought always. So they're hiding, they're disguising. And yeah, in the job context, usually it's about qualifications. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
capable of X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's interesting to bring perspective into it and saying, how do you think other people ever started something? You know,
Mm.
and the people
Yeah.
will understand, like, oh yeah, well, maybe at some point, you just started somewhere, and we have this aversion towards failing or trying something new to expose ourselves. We ourselves as coaches, we can speak to this,
Yes.
showing up in all different kinds of media, and and this kind of stuff that is new.
Yes.
So yeah, so and then it's about breaking it down and designing some curing habits. But again, then whenever you establish habits, you will face other kinds of limiting beliefs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that that's a very important thing is how do you get people comfortable enough to express them? Again, coming on today, I thought about it. I was like, I don't know if I'm comfortable like letting everybody know. I'm afraid that I'm going to be a failure. I'm afraid that I don't know what I'm doing and it's going to show to like everybody cuz I went ahead and did this and now I'm streaming it on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And if it's a hot mess, or if I'm just incompetent, I'm not doing that just in a closet. Like it's there for the world to see. That's a terrifying thing. But it's
Yeah.
also one of the things that I think you have to do. If you're going to, like I say, take the power away from that thought, because I have to go back in my brain and understand RAM thinking is something that I'm big about. And well, it's my word, RAM thinking, but what it means is that the results, the reality that you have is really the product of the actions you take, and you take those because of the mindset that you have. And your mindset is your belief system. And your beliefs come from the persistent thoughts that you think. Da, 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 right? So you
Yeah.
get right down to the root of the matter, and that is where these things come from. Any thought that is habituated, that you are thinking over and over and over again, becomes your belief. I don't have enough experience to be successful doing this. Okay, so what do I do with that? Well, I break that down. I have that thought every day. I've had that thought every day pretty much of my adult life. Like in every job and everything I've done, I've had that thought. So it's like, where do you go with that? Well, I have to address it. If somebody else told me that, like I said at the beginning of the show, if somebody else told me that, you know, where would I go with that? What would I say to somebody who stood in front of me and said, "You don't have enough experience to do that"?
Mm, mm.
Would I put up with that? Maybe. Would I like it? No. Would I go, "Oh yeah, I'm going to show you"? Probably. There's that little bit in front of me that would do that. And so that's
Yeah.
what I have to do with that. Plus, no one has experience until they do the thing. That's how you get experience. And that's
Right.
how you get better. You know,
Right.
uh, it's just one of those things. So is there like a system or a technique or something that you like to help your clients with, or that you work with on them, that you found to be like successful or just really good at, like a go-to thing?
Yeah. So to make this short, let's take the 3 steps, and you mentioned, I think, all of them as well. So I always say there's thought, there's emotion, and there's action. And now the thought can be the limiting belief that we have an associated emotion to. Let's take fear as a classical example. So this will take to action/no action. So, and what I usually do with my clients, I tackle it from both sides. You can work on your belief, and this is by, recognizing the belief so you can label it. I always say you take the flashlight and you turn it on. You're in a dark room of your mind, you turn the flashlight on, suddenly you see stuff. And when you see stuff, you can start working with it. So then you can really start working on that belief itself. For example, transitioning it into a positive belief. But that is a process by itself. But I always say, let's go the other way as well. Let's start with actions. So then we basically come from both sides. We come from actions, little actions that show us on a daily, weekly basis, yeah, actually, we can do this. Oh, yeah, this worked. I'm still alive. Yes. And that will create some positive emotions. And those emotions will tackle our limiting belief. And wherever I see the possibility, I would always recommend my clients to go action first, because what if after 1 week you can prove to yourself, I did this and that, and I tried this and that. I called up a potential new employer just for the sake of proving to myself I can get into action. I am self-empowering here and saying, yeah, you can do that. And usually then, the clients come back, they're very emotional, and they say, wow, this worked, this is great, and so on. And I'm saying, okay, let's map this. Now you're enthusiastic. What about the fear? Oh, well, I forgot about the fear. Oh, guess what? What about your limiting belief? Well, it's not present in this moment. Yeah, okay. And so those are the magic moments that I want to create. So again, from both sides. And then usually there's a very, very high chance that those limiting beliefs will become, smaller and smaller and smaller.
I think that's really important. It's one of the things, that I did this one earlier, sort of just how to overcome limiting beliefs. And one of the things that you're talking about, is that practice. You have to make it, something that is an action that you're doing daily. Some other things that I wrote down that I do that, and as Melissa said, action is a requirement for success. Absolutely, 100%. It doesn't happen without it. And that's why, working on limiting beliefs is so important, because going back to what we said about them in the beginning, these are thoughts that stop you from taking action. And at the end of the day, if we don't think something is possible for us, we create systems that make it possible that they're not possible. So for example, take it on the reverse. If I think something is possible for me, not only do I take action, but I actively seek people out who can help me with that, help me solve a problem that I'm having, something I want to overcome. Then they become part of my sphere. They teach me things. I met you through a coaching program. You taught me things. Melissa has taught me. She teaches me stuff every day, but like people that you meet will teach you things. Carrie is a great example in the audience. He is somebody that is very resilient and is always overcoming things. So I think that's very important. So that practice is really important. Writing them down for me, like literally last night, I wrote some of mine down. It's what I read to start this broadcast, because writing them down takes it's another way to take their power away. They're not up here swimming around, getting bigger and bigger. They're right here. I can look at them and go, okay. I can read them out loud. Yeah. And when I read them out loud, it sounds ridiculous. I don't know if you've ever done this. If anybody in the audience has ever done this, write your limiting belief down and then say it in a different voice to yourself. If you do, if you a low voice like a man, or if you like fake an accent, say it as if it was coming from someone else. Do a recording of it on your phone. Don't keep it, but do one. Listen to that. See how ridiculous it sounds to have somebody else say those things to you. Writing them down is huge, because it's a great way to take away their power, as is deconstructing them. Okay, that one that I mentioned. I don't have enough experience to be successful at this show. Okay, deconstruct that. I don't until I do. This is how I get that experience to be successful. That's how that happens. So, we have to do that. And yes, Melissa makes a very good comment. Would we say these things to somebody we love? Absolutely not. Yes. But we love ourselves. Yeah. Yeah. And so we have to stop doing that. So that's where, putting them out there, like you said, put a light on it. Like illuminate that, making sure that, it's not hiding in the little corners of your mind, gaining steam, gathering its little power. It's out there. You can see it. You can expose it with all of its flaws and everything that doesn't make sense about it. And that's how you
Yeah.
diffuse it, right? These are
Yeah.
thoughts. They're not real. They're not real.
Exactly. And just to see that and bring it to the table, and once you see them, that's already one of the biggest steps, yeah, that you realize what is really driving you. For me, it was quite challenging sometimes to say, okay, I have this limiting belief, but in what forms will it show up? What kind of lies am I telling me? And to accept that my thoughts that I had probably with me for decades, they
Mm-hmm.
are basically lies. And to call them out as lies was partially quite tough for me to say, wow, like what was I thinking? What was I creating at that moment in my emotional body as well, you know? So yeah, let me add. So what I usually do is, as you say, to deconstruct, to challenge them. Absolutely. What I also do is I go to the level of the needs that are behind those limiting beliefs. So as I said before, ask yourself, I have this limiting belief. Okay, what is the positive intention of this limiting belief? For example, to protect you, to avoid failure, maybe to keep a certain level of self-esteem up because you don't want to go in risky situations. Okay, but now that is the need behind the limiting belief. And we know the limiting belief is the harming part. So let's bring this need into a different context. Where else? What can I do to feel protected? What can I use in terms of affirmations? Or I used to work now with promises. What kind of promises can you tell yourself that will, help you to feel safe? And then also that need of the limiting belief is gone, and is just, you get it from a different source. Yeah, and then you can ask yourself, is it a good deal
Yep.
with that limiting belief or not? And usually you will quickly realize it is not. And that is then the trigger point, the motivational part to say, okay, I want to bring something into action. I want that some space will open up for me so I can, who would I be without that limiting belief? What will open up to me?
Right.
How would I behave? How would I talk to myself? What kind of things would I do? And this is usually something where enthusiasm and all the other emotions kick in, and that's usually a very powerful discussion. That
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah,
like
yeah,
I like using affirmations. I think they're incredibly important, as is visualization. So when I'm, saying to myself, when I have that thought of, I don't have enough experience to be successful at this, I'm not good enough. Who am I to have a show, to like do a show? And then I visualize myself being successful, not being nervous, being able to talk to people and have people talk to each other and help each other in the comment section, the audience, and provide value and such great comments for everybody else who's watching. And then being able to talk to people who are experts in their field, such as yourself, like that gives me confidence. So I visualize the successful thing happening. And as I do that, it's sort of like one of those seesaws where, the heavier end is it's heavy. I don't need it. I can get rid of those thoughts, because the lighter end, the thing that's going up, the success, is really that visualization. That's huge for me. I know some people get challenged with it, but it's very big for me. Another thing for me, that I think is incredibly important, is thought switching. When I have that, thanks, Anne. When I have that, those thoughts, it's really important to change that. I am not good enough to have my own show. That is a legit limiting belief that I have. And when I have that, I immediately say, yeah, I am. Because I have one, because I did it. So I'm doing it. And like, people are nice enough to actually show up and watch this thing. Like, I'm
yeah,
incredibly proud of that. So that doesn't bear out if you go down into it. So I think that showing up for yourself, you're one of the Melissa, she's so funny. But I mean, but that's important. And I think that if you could show up for yourself, wow, right? Because we all, can show up for other people, but showing up for yourself can be very hard. And that's where I think it's important. That action that you spoke about a few minutes ago is incredibly important. I'm going to read a
yeah,
couple of these. So, Kathleen, I think a person A person's reality is subjective, and that is why reality is as well. If people can learn to reset defective thought patterns, and then behavior automatically changes, hopefully for the better.
Right, and here we go. Let's take again. So there's the belief, there's the emotion, and there's action. Yeah, if I change the belief, the emotions and actions will change. But again, also the other way around. If you are daring and you can create an action that will prove your limiting belief to be wrong, then this all goes the other way as well and weakens the limiting belief and shows you how powerful you are, right? So
That's,
I can bring an example. For
yeah.
example, from my childhood on, I had this pattern in me that I have to be very good at sports. I have an older sister. She's, very, very smart, perfect grades, graduated best in her class and whatsoever. It never really obviously bothered me because I came up with this alternative strategy of I'm unbeatable when it comes to sports. And yeah, I still am like very agile. I can do a lot of stuff with my body physically. So I had this kind of anchor. This was my safety. But obviously, and I was lucky because I was one of the boys who grew very, first, and then I had an advantage. But guess what? A year and a half later, everybody else was big as well, and tall and powerful and fast and whatsoever. And that was a very tough time for me. And it was also related to my dad because the time he spent with me on weekends was when he watched me playing soccer. So I wanted to perform. And so until today, I have this very, very competitive, set in me and also limiting beliefs to that. You're only going to do that when you really succeed, when you will be really good at it. So how do I guarantee it? For example, by not doing it at all. So it starts to become an avoider. It starts to become a hyperachiever. It starts to be a perfectionist in whatever ways it's going to show up. And that stays with me in certain ways, but it has become obviously much, much weaker because one example. So sport is important for me. Movement is important for me. So I guess it's important for me to tell me, yeah, I'm doing sports on a regular basis. So I just came up with a 2-minute practice that I'm going to do simply every single day. So if I'm doing that practice for every single day, I can tell myself I'm continuously working on my physical well-being. And that helps me a lot speak to that limiting belief whenever it comes up. Yeah. So yeah, that was just one example from me going back to my childhood, but it's still there, it's still present. I'll have it with me for the rest of my life. But if I see it and I keep it in control, everything is fine.
Wow. I think that's so powerful too, because I think so many people can relate to that. And you mentioned a couple of the saboteurs that we all, that everybody kind of struggles with, and how those things show up for us, and it is different, and the times are different. The triggers again, can be very different. I think that, that is something that understanding where these things come from, not just that they exist, but where they come from, getting down to the root of that, because again, that helps you deconstruct it. You can understand that it's not, it's not fundamental to who you are. Again, it's not real. It's a thought. It comes from somewhere, but we get down to that and we realize that some of those situations also can happen where they're inferred information. It's something that we inferred based on someone else's words, actions, silences even can produce that. And so that's really important, and that's powerful because that goes back to your childhood. I think that's really, really powerful.
Right. And
Yeah.
and when you are at that situation then that you say, now I want to take action. Okay. I think it's important to create a sense of urgency on a daily basis. So what I'm trying to say is the little things are going to matter tremendously. So no one is going to change a limiting belief from one day to another, unless there was a certain epiphany at some point. But let's just assume it's not happened for the vast majority of us. So usually we need to create a sense of urgency on a daily basis to practice those very tiny little things. As you said, maybe affirmations. I call them promises. And I have a lot of,
Oh,
I have a lot of impact there to my clients. I say, usually I tell them, I challenge them, write down 5 promises. What do you want to promise to yourself? Make a little letter, make it beautiful looking whatsoever, and tell yourself those 5 promises. If you have a little more time, do not just read them, or just close your eyes and picture yourself doing that promise, because there is action associated to it, right? So I'm promising myself to try new XYZ, yeah, overcoming some fears. So yeah, then you can picture yourself. Your brain will bring up the pictures related to it. And that is just a very powerful way of promising to yourself to keep in action and to create this sense of urgency that this is something that I need on a regular base. And in other words, I used to say, when are you going to become a pro managing your life,
Yeah.
managing your personal well-being? Because you go to work, you have a computer, you have the calendar, you have meetings, you have everything structured, and then you come to your own personality and you're like, I don't really know. And so, I don't know, where's the book, you're writing down stuff, how are you working on yourself? So,
Yeah.
and I think that doesn't mean you need to invest an hour and a half a day for that kind of stuff. But if we are aware, and that's why morning and night routines are so helpful, and we can put a few minutes in there with the awareness about limiting beliefs, we can really shift them.
Yeah, and I had Melissa's comment up because at the beginning she said the trick is to find a why, right? And so that why you mentioned before that's really important. She mentioned my why, which is really nice of her to do. But it is important. It's like everybody has something to contribute, and your limiting beliefs can stop you from doing that, and it can prevent you from helping someone else, giving someone else the benefit of your knowledge, your experience, but also just a gift of, them being heard and validated for what they're going through. I think that's huge. And I think it's really important that you remember. I love that you call it a promise. I've never heard that before, but I actually think it's really genius to turn around instead of calling it that, just to call it a promise that you're going to make to yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Are
I
there
think that's
any? Yeah.
yeah, it's strong. It creates this. I don't know. Also, the term, maybe it's terminology, but some people say, affirmations. Now that's something I don't work with. Okay, how about a promise?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's very accessible for many people. And yeah, and the purpose, obviously, as a purpose coach, I can talk endlessly about purpose, but that to me is the engine, the driving force. So if we have an understanding of that purpose behind it, it will help us to overcome our fears, because we want to serve in one way or another. And yeah, and that will teach us about our limiting beliefs. And it is so much fun if we actually starting doing something that we never thought we could,
Yeah.
and all those associated emotions and so on. And then suddenly the mind is just expanding and bringing up more ideas. And this is just a very, very empowering moment. And just you running the show, Gretchen, is a perfect example of it, because here you are hosting the show,
Yeah.
as if you would do it for, I don't know, a year or two already. And yeah, there you go, right? So
It's weird, really, for me, and I'm so glad that Melissa is here because she's one of the people who actually, I don't know that she knows this, but whoops, I'm gonna out it if you don't. But she's one of the people who really helped me find my voice in terms of understanding that it is okay to get yourself out there, to not be comfortable, to not hide behind those thoughts that you have about yourself, and to understand that they're not true. And so, a couple of other people also were very participant in that. But, when I knew that, like, this, watching other people be able to do it, like you just said, it's so much fun when you can get around that and do something new. Even that fear is still there. I still have that thought all the time. Like, every time I'm like, okay, next week's show. And then I'm like, what if it's a big stinking bomb and it's terrible and you're not going to be any good? And, da, 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 da. And then I
yeah,
have to just like do the whole thing and just say that's not true and break it down and do all those things, that taking action against it, which I think is also so important. I want to be sure that I mention this to everybody who is watching. If you don't know Peter, here is his LinkedIn profile. That's him at peterschlatt.com, or Peter Schlatt. I've got his other one coming up. He's super, super interesting. He knows his stuff, man. His website, peterschlatt.com. And on his LinkedIn, he also has a purpose quiz, which is pretty cool, that you can take. And then I also have down here, I want to do it again, but I have how to connect with Peter. And that's important because dude is everywhere. He is on LinkedIn. He is on Instagram. He is on Facebook. Um, So definitely connect with him. He's got a lot of knowledge, and I think it's so important to sort of align yourself with people who can help make you better. You know, if they are yeah, Melissa, right. Even if those thoughts, there are some that have a kernel of truth to them, you can change that. So, you know, I'll go back to the one I keep talking about. I don't have enough experience to be successful at this. Technically, right now, that could be true. But the more I do this, the more experience I get, the more successful I hope I will become, that I know I will become. So that again is true. It goes right to what she was saying. I think that's really important. And then she also follows up with, if you learn to grow beyond. Oprah's first episode. Oh, I never thought to go. I will say this, based on that, Melissa, this was a confidence builder that I talked about, I think, on last week's Plight Attendant. And that was to go back to some of your favorite YouTubers or whatever you want to call them. Go back to their first videos and look at how far they've come, and look at how great, how like successful they've become in terms of their delivery, their you know, their verbiage, their, you know, working with other people, their guests, being able to manage, like I'm trying to manage the comments and my overlays and everything else all at the same time. Look how good they've become. Nobody started out that way. Again, nobody was born knowing what our fingers were for, or, you know, how to feed ourselves or walk. We had to learn those things. And so if we were born with limiting beliefs, we would never do anything. So I think it's really important to grow beyond. I love that. Now I want to go back and look at her first episode. Thank you, Melissa, because
Yeah.
it's very telling when you do that, when you go back and you look at how people that you are now, like, wow, they're so polished and perfect. I could never do that. I could never be as good as them. You know, I'm not famous. I'll never be like, you know, Mr. Beast. Well, look at some of his early, he'll even tell you like his early stuff. You know, it's like, you know, he just a kid with a camera, and he was doing it 10 years before anybody noticed. So I think it's really important too to understand that there is that. And I wanted to ask you about this too, Peter, the competitive nature, like competitive thoughts and limiting beliefs. And is there a relationship there that can be broken, or is that necessary?
So you can utilize, for example, that competitive edge, but you need to be cautious. So, for example, my limiting belief showing up as the competitor, he can say, you know, this is needed because then you're motivated. So how do I know this is a lie versus, oh, this is really motivating me, right? And it is when we get on the level of the needs that are behind it. So if it's a lie and it says you need to be competitive just for the sake of being competitive, so if there's no particular need other than, let's say, I need to be better than others to feel good, that is not a real need. So then I know it's false. But when I see that, like, I want to be competitive because then it's motivational for me, and then, you know, I can learn from others. So the need is to expand my knowledge. So there's the good side of competitiveness. So if I see that need coming up, then I know, okay, this is true. So there we always need to go on that level, on that first level on needs, and then we can identify, you know.
That's
And
really,
so
yeah.
yeah, not any kind of bad thought is necessarily always you know, a long-lasting bad one. But that's why this is also not a task just done in a day, and that's why it is interesting just to start with one and see what else will come up, because once we've realized that pattern, then it is just very important. So I wanted to relate to something else. There's a picture I use, and I think it applies to many of us. Childhood and teenagehood. Basically, I always say this is like setting us on a train, because, you know, we are dominated by our parents. We depend with our lives on them. We are dominated by our school system or kindergarten or whatsoever. We are always told what to do, even in universities or whatsoever. We are told what to do. We end up in companies maybe and still are in that pattern of people tell us what to do. So we are not very self-empowered. I always describe this as I was sitting on a train, lovingly prepared by my parents. They gave me direction, they gave me the funding, they gave me basically the education and so on. But at what point of life did I choose to be on the train? Or at what point of life did I say, I don't want to be on a train that goes only one direction and I cannot even stop it because I'm completely dominated by the train. I'm just a passenger here. So that's why I always said, you know, at some point I just jumped off my train, and maybe I choose a car or a bicycle or whatsoever. I can change directions whenever I want. I can stop. I can make a break. I can do this and I can do that. Way more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the moment or the realization. Guys, are you still on a train? Uh, are those limiting beliefs carrying you in a certain direction? And are you really aware this is the direction that you need and you want
Yeah.
to go? And yeah, that for me was like a way to explain it also. Yeah, and bicycle. Yeah, Melissa, I loved it. And this is why also last year, or in 2021, basically, I went on the bicycle. I traveled through Europe for 5 months on a bicycle, something I never imagined that I was able to do. But there you go, it's done. And it was so great, just to be in this spiritual habit of being on this bicycle every day long. And it made me connect deeply to my intuitions. And obviously, also, it made me realize a lot of limiting beliefs I had. You will never make it there, and this and that will go wrong. But I saw them, every day. And so I could speak to them every day and just, yeah.
I think that that's another good point is that, for a lot of people, we have these persistent, long held limiting beliefs, right? These things that we've thought about for a long time. But there are situational limiting beliefs that will just sort of pop up, right? Like when you're doing something new and you'll realize you're having one, like when you're on the bike excursion, the trip. I'll never get there. I'll never finish this, blah, blah, blah. If you're trying something new, you know, and that can be for some people a discouraging thing to have them continue along the path. And like Melissa was saying earlier, you've got to keep going. You've got to, and you were both saying you've got to take that action. I'm sorry, my allergies all of a sudden just went, we're here. But I think it's the air in this room. It always happens. But when you're doing something new and a limiting belief just sort of pops up out of nowhere that you didn't know actually was there, have you ever had that happen and then had to work through that? For me, well, I won't answer for me. Let you answer that first.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think let's take the context of coaching, because that's very present to both of us. So limiting belief for me is, for example, I can never be a successful coach here in Denmark. I don't speak Danish at the moment. Everything is language wise. So my limiting belief is nobody will ever accept you. Right. And so then to realize and basically to take note about what is currently stopping me, and having the questions ready, and basically do it a daily or at least a weekly routine, and writing this down made me realize, okay, I have this thought in me. And is it pessimistic thought, or is it just a realistic thought? Or is that just, again, the limiting belief hiding as pretending to be, here, I'm the realistic one,
Mm-hmm.
just you were speaking German and English, so why would they? So and then I saw this and I was like, yeah, this is limiting me a lot, because yes, it's great to have a business online, but I need people. People are my energy. And if I talk to people face to face and so on, this is a whole different story for me as well. So I want to create this kind of environment for me. It is a desire. It is part of my purpose to be in that context. And so then I was like, okay, I need to take action.
Mm-hmm.
Last week I received a newsletter from the municipality here, from the city where I live, and they were like, we want to make a brainstorm because we want to help the expatriates that live here in our community. And if you guys have ideas, please share. And this morning I met the two ladies from the municipality, and now in March I'm able to design my first workshop, speaking to the people that just moved here, and
That's so great.
helping them for having a vision for their time in Denmark, especially looking also at the spouses, and that they have a purpose for the time being here,
Yeah.
and helping that they have a job satisfaction basically high, and in the end serving the municipality by having people here on a longer term base. So there you go. Suddenly this comes out of nothing, but I had to realize that this was a limiting belief, because now I was searching for an opportunity, and there it was.
And I think that's a really good point too, is that when you're open for those and you're looking for them, that's, where you'll find them. But when you're telling yourself that it's not possible, you're not open to even seeing when they're there. I think that's really important. And congratulations, by the way. I think that's amazing and so exciting. Yeah. I hope you record the workshop or something so that, we can see it. I wanted to put this up on the screen because Carrie, I know, has a lot going on. And so he had, yesterday was a tough day. He's doing something new. He's going to have to work through it, but he's excited. He's, can't wait to embrace it. And I think that's really important, is that you can have a day or a situation that will challenge you, where these thoughts are going to come up and they're going to tell you all these things that are not possible, you can't do, blah, blah, blah. But then in an instant, it can be turned around. In a day, in a moment, you can change that. You can reframe and have a different thought about that. I think that's really important. And I'm really, thanks, for sharing that, Carrie, because I think that's also really important for everybody to hear. So I wanted to say, and I know we're 45 minutes in, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But speaking of that workshop, do you have anything else that you're working on right now?
Well, what I do and what I recognized with my clients is, they come to me, for example, with job satisfaction or relationship, and this is already cooking there for a couple of years. And then you can start with some initial coaching sessions. But again, I'm always keep on telling them what we're going to do then is we bring you into a state of awareness. But this does not mean that you are in a state of taking action. So then I'm always saying, let's go down to your purpose. And once that is crystal clear, from there, this is like your inner compass. And with that inner compass, you can apply it to your work environment, to your relationship environment, to your living environment, to your personal well-being, because you know what serves you best when you know your purpose. And so usually I'm running them through a 12-week program in which it's like a funnel. We go very broad and open up all different aspects of the personality of the persons, which is a lot of fun, but also partially a little exhausting because there's just a lot of information to process about yourself. And but then there comes the moment when we say, okay, stop. We have done stock taking now. There are tons of words on how it then can describe who you are and what you want to become. Now let's again go and find the essence. And then the essence will lead us towards that single sheet. In the end, it's all on one piece of paper, who they are, what's the purpose. And I always love that coaching session because usually it's very tearful and emotional and uplifting.
Yeah.
Because they're like, it suddenly all makes sense. And so from there, then I take them into action. And that's the last part of the program as well. And saying, okay, what are we going to do out of it? And where do we start? Is it relationship? Is it job? And so on. And I just had a client and, he said in the end, oh yeah, I really like this. I'm so technically and so on. And currently at my job, I can't do it, but it might take another year until I can switch jobs. So he is living at the ocean and he bought a jet ski, but a very old one on purpose.
Oh.
And he said, now I'm going to deconstruct it because I love doing it. I'm going to clean it, repair it, put it back together. I have the greatest time with myself.
Wow.
And so that is curing him and keeping him in positive energy. So this was one of the things that just came out of him saying, I got to do this. I got to do this. I would have never done this, and then he bought it. He sent me pictures and now, so that's very nice to see by the end that people have that purpose and they take this compass and they go.
Yeah. I think, and that's kind of, it's empowering, but also all wrapped up in that is that confidence building and that sort of just, understanding of yourself on a deeper level, which is really just so important. I just want to put back up this just so if anybody wants to connect again with Peter, because this is really deep stuff, but it's so important to do. And I'm really grateful that you took some time today. I'm grateful that everybody took some time today. I'm also going to put this on the screen for everybody. Just FYI, hold on one moment. If you would like to connect with me, this is mine. And you can find me on Facebook, although I don't have a lot of people that I connect with on Facebook, but I'm working on it. And then, of course, YouTube. So, this is just so much fun. I'm so glad to see everybody here. I do want to mention a couple of things too while we're talking about these things. So, one thing is that tips for the week, right? If you could give somebody some tips for the week in terms of how they can, if something comes up for them, right? What can they do about that? How can they work through in the moment if a tip is coming up, if a limiting belief is coming up?
So the instant thing is, I would say, stop, close your eyes, and feel and identify the associated emotion to it. To just challenge yourself, what is going on here? Because in the end, you want to have your belief and you want to have the associated emotion as a package. You need to understand how they are coming, because they're coming as a package. And once you have that, you can create a promise out of this, something that will be powerful for you to promise to yourself that speaks towards that limiting belief. And in the end, have a success diary. Write down your successes. And that is something that can be done in an instant. So you can close your eyes for 2 minutes. You can create a promise to yourself, and you can just have a book and write your successes.
I
And
love the success diary.
that's very easy stuff to do, and it will keep us, uplifting and see the good side of the story and not the bad side of the story. So here we go. It's always on my desk. This is my success diary. I choose a different color and so on because I know this is a different thing. And yeah, and it's just so important.
I love that. I think that's such good, actionable, and practical advice, because one of the first things to help you overcome a limiting belief is to write it down. But that flips the script in terms of, yeah, okay, you can write the belief down, but now let's have a success diary. I love that. I have, a few years ago, I do a gratitude project every year. And a few years ago, it was one particular thought every day. I had a huge glass jar. I wrote them, rolled them up, tied them off with a little piece of twine, put them in the thing. And by the end of the year, that jar was full. I actually have those in a box. I saved them because, just I couldn't continue to save the glass jar, but I did save them in a box. My team, before I left corporate, did the same thing for me, which was a really cool gift. But those kind of thoughts, a success diary that you can flip through. I know Melissa has these journals that she, gives to her clients, and everybody's got a little, a mechanism and technique, but that's a great one that anybody can do anywhere, even if you carry around like me, just like a little moleskin, right? That you just have around. You can have that, and you can make that part of your success diary. I love that idea, and I'm going to totally steal it from you and have one and make one
And guys,
now.
and if you stop following up through your diary, just keep in mind, if knowledge would be the only thing that is important, then everybody with an internet access would be a millionaire already. So it's not necessarily about the awareness itself, it's about the action we are about to take based on it. So action, as we said before, is key. So bring yourself into action, which is why, work on the promises, have a success diary in place, and just keep this very minimum things rolling on a daily or at least weekly base. And that's going to turn you around in a couple of weeks or months. And that is just very empowering because you actually need no one else for this. You just do it by yourself. And it would also be, you don't need a coach to tell you to do this, because the importance is that you know that it is important, and that the action can be way more powerful than just your thoughts. And knowing this, just have fun in going into action,
I
because
love
it
that.
can be absolutely empowering with very little tasks.
Yeah, and with action, you're actually seeing yourself progress. You're seeing the positive results. That success diary, I think, is just a genius thing. And so I love that. And I want to leave people with that with you, because I want people to know, again, please connect with Peter. He's got some like wonderful insights on things. And then also I wanted to mention too, that tip of the week, take action, write it down, but in a successful way. So, take that with you for the rest of the week. It's Tuesday. We got a few more days left in the week. So that's a great tip to take for the week and attack those kind of limiting beliefs. I also want to mention just a little quick show note. I'm toying with the idea of doing an after party for the Plight Attendant for all the topics that anybody wanted to continue to talk about. Taking a page from Melissa's book and maybe doing it as an audio event. So it's just a thought. If you have, you know, any aptitude for that, let me know. You can DM me. Otherwise, I'm gonna let you go. We will be announcing next week's Plight Attendant. We do have Stephanie Lee joining us, so I will let everybody know more about that later. But again, I really want to say a heartfelt thank you to Peter Schlatt for joining us. It has been a pleasure talking to you today. Peter is, again, a life and purpose coach, and you can connect with him anytime on LinkedIn. Again, you can get down into all of his socials right here. And thank you again to everybody in the audience and everybody who tuned in to watch. Again, there are so many things competing for our attention, and I am so grateful that you chose to spend a little bit of your day with us here today. So thank you. And with that, I leave you all till next week. Bye.
Bye.